All right, this video is for Module 58 on antisocial relations. Keep in mind that antisocial relations is not the same as antisocial personality disorder. This is just basically talking about some of the negative connotations of interacting with other people and social behavior. So as my lovely little picture in the upper right-hand corner shows, the first thing that we have to talk about is prejudice. Prejudice is this idea of this unjustifiable attitude that includes both stereotypes and discrimination. Stereotypes by themselves are going to be some sort of generalized belief about a particular group, whereas discrimination is acting on that particular stereotype and negative behavior. So, for example, my picture says, "We serve whites only, no Spanish or Mexicans." Obviously, they have not only a negative stereotype and a generalized belief about Spanish and Mexican people, but they are also discriminating against them and actually acting on it, thus the prejudice. Now, what causes prejudice? Well, first of all, stereotypes often rationalize inequalities. We have stereotypes that have a belief that kind of rationalize uh, anything that's unequal about particular groups. For example, a lot of people talk about Asians, and they say, "Oh, Asian cultures, they're so much smarter, right? Asians perform better in math." Okay, so well, what is this doing? This is actually just rationalizing why of particular people from Asian cultures that have a better math score than you, or why Asian countries have performed better on math tests, for example. That's just rationalizing the inequality in the indifference between two particular groups. You could also talk about stereotypes rationalizing inequalities as far as negative connotations, and like a particular culture may be known to maybe perform worse, and we rationalize and talk about the stereotype as to why that happens. Oh, they're just lazy, or oh, they don't work very hard. Okay, stereotypes rationalize those inequalities. We also have an in-group bias. We tend to favor our own group over another. And I unfortunately wrote own twice. Take out the second own. So we favor our own group over another. In class, I had to do this when I separated the class into two groups, and you had to basically go and explain the other group's behavior. So one time I did this, and it was where half the class was wearing uniform shirts and the other half the class was wearing non-uniform shirts. It was a dress down day. So uh, they had to explain the other's behavior. And initially, it started off with very innocent sounding explanations, but it got kind of nasty where they were talking about, oh, they're poor, so they can't afford a uniform shirt, or they don't, they're dirty, they don't keep their uniform shirts clean, that's why they're not wearing a uniform shirt, they're lazy. Okay, those were in groups bias, where we tend to favor our own group when we look at the positive side of our own group, and tend to blame the other group and the outside group. So this cartoon says, "It's simple. You can't have an in crowd unless you leave somebody out of it. Without uncool, there is no cool. So basically, you're nothing without me." Ha! Says Susie will later win a Nobel Prize for her theory of special social relativity. There's also the reason of the scapegoat theory. So the scapegoat theory is the idea that people always want somebody to blame. No, you don't want to take responsibility for your own self. So the scapegoat theory is that we're going to blame someone else. For example, Hitler used this justification. After World War I, Germany's economy tanked terribly because they were having to pay these war reparations to all these other countries. And people were, very upset, obviously, in Germany about the fact that their country was in a terrible state. Well, Hitler came out with the explanation, "Oh, it's not your fault. Don't worry about it. It's not your fault. You know whose fault it is? It's the Jewish people. Yes, that's their fault." Everybody wants to blame somebody else. Who's the scapegoat? Okay, that justifies in their minds this prejudice, and so that causes these stereotypes and this prejudiced behavior. This cartoon says, um, oh, hold on, my little thing's in the way. Says, we feel the office scapegoat is a key component of team building, and you are a great candidate for the job. Yeah, if they were actually interviewing for a scapegoat. Other causes of prejudice include the other race effect. And this is the idea that people tend to think of other races as the same. Oftentimes people say, oh, they just all blend together. I can't tell the difference, right? People complain about, for example, Hispanic communities and different Hispanic cultures, people looking all the same, or Asian cultures particularly saying, oh, they all look the same, right? But it's interesting because that's our viewpoint as not being from that culture. White people are terrible at this. Caucasian people are terrible at this. I used to teach a lot of Korean students, and I would have Korean students that would complain and say, white people, they can't tell the difference. They're like, why can't you tell the difference between I'm Korean, I'm not Chinese, I'm not Japanese. There's a difference, and they can tell the difference. Imagine if you were from another culture. What if you were Korean or Japanese? I found this picture. This is hilarious. This is white people. They all look the same. And honestly, in this picture, they all kind of do. They all kind of have the same hairstyle and haircut, and they all kind of have the same picture, same type of shirt on, and same kind of face. They all kind of blend together, right? If you're from another culture, that's what we look like to them. Um, Other reasons why prejudice develops is that we're more likely to remember cases that fit our stereotypes. For example, terrorists, right? And I say terrorists, people think, oh, all terrorists are, most people think all terrorists are Muslim, right? Well, that's not necessarily true. They start to think of all Muslims as being terrorists. There's a lot of terrorists that are Muslim, yes, but not all Muslims are terrorists. I'll give you, for instance, in 2001, right before the 9/11, I was teaching my first year teaching, and I was teaching in a school in Kansas, and I was teaching a world history class. And at the very beginning of the year, we had this world religions unit. And I knew that because we're in the middle of Kansas and I have very limited exposure to world religions, I knew that especially my students did not have any exposure to the religion of Islam. And so I actually was able to find a Muslim man that came to talk to my classes. And what was interesting though was is that he came to talk to my classes about what it's like to be a Muslim man and how he practices and what he believes. And then, unbeknownst to me, obviously, weeks later, 9/11 happened. Which do you think was more impressionable to them? The speaker that came in and talked to us about his faith, or the terrorist plot that killed hundreds of people at the World Trade Center? Obviously, the second would be the one that they're gonna stick out more and remember more. So we only think about the ones that fit the stereotype. We kind of forget the things that actually go against the stereotype. And then lastly, another cause is that people want to believe in this just world phenomenon. People want to believe that, if you're suffering, you must have done something. You must be bad. You must have done something to cause that. This is the reason why people blame, for example, the poor. They say, oh, well, it's your fault that you're poor. You're poor because you didn't work very hard. Why didn't you work harder? Why didn't you get off your, butt and go get a job? That's this idea of this just world phenomenon where they blame them. This also explains, unfortunately, where people blame rape victims, or victims of violence, and they say, well, why it's your fault. Why, you were, dressing like that. You were acting like that. That was leading to that. Okay. That's that idea of a just world phenomenon. So, this picture kind of goes along with that. It says the little fish, it says, there is no justice in the world. The middle fish says that there is some justice in the world. And the big fish says, the world is just. if you're at the top of the food chain and you're a rich white guy, or you're a rich person, you think the world is just. Everything's right with the world. But if you are on the bottom of the social rung, you probably look at it as the world is very skewed. There's not a whole lot of help for people. And so it's this idea of, where when you're at the top, you have much more likely to have a prejudiced view of the world. Okay, switching from prejudice to aggression. Aggression is another antisocial relations that has to do with this. So aggression, keep in mind, is not just physical aggression. So obviously physical aggression and hitting or punching or those kinds of things, kicking, fighting, but it's also verbal aggression, and the words that you choose to say and the yelling and those kinds of things. So what causes aggression? Well, aggression, first of all, has a biological link. There is a genetic link, a neural link, and a biochemical link. Interestingly enough, they are still looking for the genes that actually cause aggression to happen, but they do know for sure of one specific gene that is linked to aggression, and about 50% of the population have it. The Y chromosome. The Y chromosome is definitely linked to more aggression than X chromosomes. So men are much more likely to be aggressive than women, which you probably already knew. Other links to aggression include frustration. Um, the more frustrated you are, for example, have you ever had problems getting something out of the vending machine, out of the pop machine? Have you ever kicked it? Have you ever rocked the machine, hit it? Okay, you're frustrated. What about road rage? When what causes road rage? People driving too slow, cutting you off, traffic. You're frustrated, so you're going to be that much more aggressive. You're much more likely to tailgate. You're much more likely to yell at people and obscenities and honking horns and things like that. You're frustrated. Other times, you get interrupted by the phone call. You get a phone call. You get negative phone calls. You may yell, throw things. Aggression also happens where we learn that aggression pays off. I'll give you a prime example. Sports, lots of sports, particularly football, you have to be aggressive, for example, in football to win, to be able to go further. So you learn that aggression pays off. You're going to be praised by it. You're going to be seen as a better player, and you're going to score more points or get better stats. However, at the same point in time, there's lots of news media coverage about, for example, football players and in other sports, where they don't learn to other ways to deal with their aggression. And so they don't know how to deal with frustrations and anxieties and problems outside of the game. So what do they relate to? What do they know? Aggression. So you have, unfortunately, players that are, getting brought up on charges of abuse or assault, or even in some cases murder. They learn that aggression pays off. And then the last thing is that we also have modeling. Modeling through parents as well as the media can also cause aggression. Parents can model behavior. Think about it this. What about spanking? Okay, we teach our kids from the very early years that it's not right to hit. Don't hit people. But what do? You turn around and give them a spanking for misbehaving. Is that a mixed message? Or even going back to that road rage, how do you behave in the car when somebody cuts you off, or somebody is going too slow? Your kids pick up on those things. Or even the media, watching violence on TV, whether that be in cartoons or whether that be in video games. All of that can lead to aggression. All right, that's it for Module 58. Let me know if you have any questions.